The stars were quiet that night. They always were in the Vega 7 asteroid belt, far from the busy shipping lanes where most ships traveled. Lieutenant Park liked the quiet. She had been serving on the Earth Defense Corps vessel Horizon's Edge for 3 years now, and she had learned to love these long patrol shifts where nothing happened. But tonight, something was different. The ship's alarm made a soft sound. Not the loud emergency alarm, just the gentle ping that meant the sensors had found something interesting. Leaned forward in her chair and looked at the screen. "What do we have?" she asked. Ensign, her co-pilot and friend, was already working at his station. He was younger than her by 5 years, with quick hands and a good heart. "Debris field, Lieutenant. Looks like a ship. A big one." Felt her stomach tighten. Debris meant damage. Damage meant possible survivors. She pressed a few buttons and the image on her screen became clearer. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. It was the Celestial Mercy. She recognized the design immediately. A Galactic Union freighter, one of the big ones that carried passengers and cargo between star systems. But now it was broken into 1,000 pieces, floating in the darkness like a dead animal torn apart by predators. "Pirates," said quietly. "Look at those burn marks, hits." Nodded. The pirates in this sector were getting bolder every month. They attacked ships, took what they wanted, and left nothing but wreckage behind. The Galactic Union kept promising to do something about it, but promises didn't stop. "Scan for life signs," ordered. Worked quickly. The seconds felt like hours, then his face changed. One life sign, very weak, coming from Escape Pod 7. One survivor. Out of what must have been hundreds of passengers and crew, only one had made it, did not hesitate. "Take us in. Prepare the docking arm." The Horizon's Edge moved through the debris field carefully. Pieces of metal and plastic bounced off the hull, making sounds like rain on a roof. Kept her eyes on the escape pod. It was small and damaged, with a crack running down one side. The life sign inside was getting weaker. "We need to hurry," she said. They brought the pod into the cargo bay and sealed the doors. Was out of her seat before the air pressure had finished adjusting. She ran down the corridor, her boots making loud sounds on the metal floor, followed close behind. The escape pod looked even worse up close. It had been built to save lives, but it had barely survived whatever had happened to the Celestial Mercy. Found the emergency release and pulled hard. The door opened with a hiss of bad air. Inside, she saw something she did not expect. It was not human. It was not any species she had met in person before, though she recognized it from the Union databases she had studied during training. They were a proud warrior species, famous across the galaxy for their strength and their fierce loyalty to their families, which they called packs. They had almost gone to war with humanity 10 years ago over territory disputes. Relations between the two species were still cold and uncomfortable. But this was not a warrior, this was a cub. She was small, maybe the size of a human child of 5 or 6 years. Her body was covered in silver-blue fur that should have been beautiful but was now dirty and matted. She had 6 limbs, 4 arms and 2 legs, all curled tight against her body. Her eyes were closed but could see them moving behind the lids, lost in some nightmare. The cub was wrapped in emergency blankets, but she was still shivering. Her breathing was shallow and fast. She was starving, dehydrated, and terrified. Climbed into the pod. The space was tight, barely big enough for her to kneel. She could smell fear and sickness in the air. Slowly, carefully, she reached out her hand toward the cub. The cub's eyes opened. They were the color of amber, broken into many pieces like a shattered window. Beautiful and sad and full of more pain than any child should ever know. The cub looked its hand and flinched backward, pressing herself against the wall of the pod. "It's okay," said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub did not understand her words. Remembered that the universal translator took a moment to adjust to new species. She waited, keeping her hand extended, not moving, not threatening. Then the translator clicked on, and the cub spoke. Her voice was so quiet that almost missed it, just a whisper, barely louder than breathing. But the words were clear. "Are you my pack?" Felt something break inside her chest. Not a bad break, more like a door opening that had been closed for a very long time. She looked at this small, frightened creature who had lost everything, who was alone in the cold darkness of space, who was asking the only question that mattered to her people. "Are you my pack? Are you my family? Will you protect me? Do I belong to you?" Did not answer with words. She took off her jacket, the warm one she wore during long shifts, and she wrapped it around the shivering cub. Then she reached out with both arms and lifted the small body gently, carefully, like she was holding something precious. The cub had claws, knew this from the databases. Claws could cut through steel. They were weapons that made the species feared across the galaxy. But as held the cub against her chest, those claws stayed hidden. The small hands grabbed the fabric of shirt and held on tight, but they did not scratch, did not cut. The cub pressed her face into his shoulder and made a sound. Not crying exactly, but close. A release of tension, of fear, of loneliness. The sound of someone who had been holding on too long finally letting go. Stood up slowly, the cub in her arms. Was waiting outside the pod, his face showing all the surprise and confusion he was feeling. "Lieutenant," he said, "that's a... I know. They don't like us. They really don't like us. I know. What are you going to do?" Looked down at the cub in her arms. The small creature had stopped shivering. Her eyes were closed again, but this time peacefully. She was asleep, truly asleep, maybe for the first time since the attack on the Celestial Mercy. "I'm going to take care of her," said. "Get the medical kit. She needs food and water and warmth. We'll figure out the rest later." Nodded and ran to get supplies. Carried the cub to the small medical bay on the horizon's edge. She laid her down on the bed but did not let go of her hand. Even in sleep, the cub held on tight, her small fingers wrapped around larger ones. Outside the windows, the wreckage of the Celestial Mercy drifted past. Somewhere in that debris were the bodies of this cub's family, her pack, everyone she had ever known and loved. They were gone, and they were never coming back. But the cub was still here, still alive, still holding on. Made a silent promise in that moment. She did not know what would come next. She did not know what laws she might break or what enemies she might make. She only knew one thing for certain. She would not let go. 3 days passed on the horizon's edge. 3 days of slow travel towards Station Orion 9, the nearest Galactic Union outpost. 3 days that changed everything. The cub's name was Riel. She told this on the second day when she finally felt safe enough to speak more than a few words. Her voice was still soft and small, but it was getting stronger. She ate the food gave her, drank the water, and slept many hours each day. Her body was healing. But she would not leave side. Wherever went, Riel followed. When sat in the pilot's chair, Riel sat on the floor beside her. When ate in the small kitchen, Riel sat across from her and watched with those amber eyes. When slept, Riel curled up at the foot of her bed like a loyal pet, though she was so much more than that. The crew of the Horizon's Edge was small, just 5 people including and, at first, they were nervous around Riel. They had a reputation for violence, for pride, for holding grudges that lasted generations. But Riel was just a child, a scared, lonely child who had lost everyone she loved. By the 3rd day, had taught her how to fold paper into the shape of birds. Riel's 4 hands made the work easy, and she laughed for the first time when her paper bird turned out better than his. It was a beautiful sound, that laugh. Held onto it like treasure. Then they reached Station Orion 9, and everything fell apart. The station was huge, a city floating in space where thousands of beings from hundreds of species lived and worked. Ships came and went every hour, carrying goods and people across the galaxy. It was a place of laws and rules, of bureaucracy and paperwork. and the Galactic Union officials were waiting. They came aboard the Horizon's Edge within minutes of docking, 4 of them, wearing the uniforms of Union administration. Their leader was a thin human man with cold eyes and a tablet in his hands. "Lieutenant Park," he said, "we received your report about the survivor from the Celestial Mercy, a minor, correct?" "That's right," said. "Her name is Riel. Her family was on the freighter, they didn't make it." The official nodded like this was just information, just data to be processed. "We've already contacted the government. A diplomatic representative is on his way. The child will be returned to her people." Felt Riel's hand grab her leg, the small fingers squeezed tight. "Returned? What do you mean returned?" "Article 47C of the Relations Charter," the official said, reading from his tablet. "No member species may claim guardianship over a minor of another species without explicit biological family consent or species council approval. The law is clear, Lieutenant. The child belongs with her own kind." "Her own kind is dead," said, her voice harder than she intended. "I pulled her out of wreckage. I've been taking care of her for 3 days. She trusts me." "That's not relevant. The law exists to protect children from cultural erasure and forced assimilation. It was written for good reasons, and it applies here." Riel pressed herself against Sleg, hiding behind her like was a shield against the world. The officials looked at the small cub with no warmth in their eyes. To them, Riel was a problem to be solved, a file to be closed. The representative arrived 6 hours later. His name was Elder and he was old, very old. His silver fur had turned white in many places, and his movements were slow and careful. But his eyes were sharp, and his voice carried the weight of authority when he spoke. "I am here for the cub," he said. "She will return with me to Prime, where she will be placed with a suitable clan." Had been expecting this, but hearing the words still hurt. She looked down at Riel, who was pressed against her side, trembling. "Elder," said carefully, choosing her words with great thought, "has anyone asked Riel what she wants?" The old ears moved backward, a sign of surprise or displeasure. "She is a child. She does not know what she wants. She's been through something terrible. She watched her entire family die. The only comfort she's found is with me. Doesn't that count for anything?" "It counts for nothing in the face of law and tradition." Elder stepped forward, looking at Riel with something that might have been kindness, but felt more like ownership. "Come, little one, I will take you home." Riel pressed harder against. Her 4 arms wrapped around his waist, and she shook her head. "She's scared," said. "Can't you see that?" "She is scared because this situation is strange and wrong. A human caring for a cub. It goes against nature. It goes against everything our species believes. The sooner she is returned to her people, the sooner she can begin to heal properly." Wanted to argue. She wanted to fight, to shout, to make them understand. But she could feel the weight of the law pressing down on her. She was just a lieutenant, just one human against the entire Galactic Union legal system. Then Riel spoke. Her voice was small but clear. Every being in the room heard her words. "I want to stay with." Elder froze. The Union officials looked at each other with uncertainty, felt tears burning in her eyes. "Little one," Elder said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "You don't understand. This human is not your pack. She cannot be your pack. You belong with your own kind." "My pack is dead." Riel's voice broke on the words, but she kept going. "The pirates killed them, all of them, my mother, my father, my brothers, everyone. They're all gone, and I was alone in the dark for so long, and I thought I was going to die too." She looked up at those amber eyes full of tears. "Then she came. She found me. She held me. She made the dark go away. She is the only thing I have left in the whole universe." Riel turned back to Elder. "You want to take that away from me too?" The room was silent. Elder stared at the small cub, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at studying her face like he was trying to understand a puzzle that made no sense to him. "The law is the law," he said finally. "It does not bend for feelings. It does not break for tears. The child will be returned to Prime within 48 hours. That is final." He turned and walked out of the room. The Union officials followed, leaving Riel alone. Riel looked up at, "They're going to take me away." Knelt down so she could look into Riel's eyes. She wanted to lie, to say everything would be okay, to promise that no one would separate them. But she had never lied to Riel, and she would not start now. "They're going to try," she said. "Will you let them?" Thought about the law. She thought about her career, her rank, her future. She thought about all the rules she had followed her whole life, all the times she had done what she was told because that was what good soldiers did. Then she looked at Riel, at this small creature who had lost everything and found hope in a stranger's arms. "No," said, "I won't let them." She did not know how she would keep that promise. She only knew that she would die trying. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Someone on station Orion 9 had recorded the moment when Riel declared she wanted to stay with. That video found its way onto the information networks that connected every planet and station in the Galactic Union. Within 12 hours, billions of beings had watched a small, frightened cub beg not to be taken from the human who had saved her. The reaction was immediate and powerful. On Earth, people gathered outside government buildings with signs that said, "Let her stay," and "Family is more than blood." On Prime, the situation was more complicated. Some were angry that a human had dared to touch one of their cubs. Others were not so sure. The old tradition said that pack was everything, that loyalty was the highest value. And wasn't this human showing exactly that kind of loyalty? But the law did not care about public opinion. Admiral contacted directly, his face appearing on the communication screen in her quarters. He was a serious man, well respected in the Earth Defense Corps, known for being fair and reasonable. Had served under him for 2 years. "Lieutenant Park," he said, his voice tired, "you've created quite a situation." "I didn't create anything, sir. I just pulled a child out of wreckage." "And now you're refusing to hand her over to her own people." His jaw tightened. "I'm refusing to hand her over to strangers who treat her like cargo. There's a difference." Admiral sighed. He looked older than remembered, like the weight of this problem was pressing down on his shoulders. "I understand your feelings. I even respect them. But this isn't about feelings. They are threatening diplomatic consequences if we don't comply with Union law. Earth can't afford another conflict with them." "What about what Riel can afford? She's lost her entire family. The only person she trusts is me. And you want me to just hand her over to be shipped off to some strangers on a planet she's never seen?" "I want you to follow orders, Lieutenant. That's what soldiers do." Stood up straight, her hands clasped behind her back. "Then court-martial me. Take my rank. Throw me in prison. I won't do it. I won't abandon her." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You know I don't want to do that. You're a good officer, one of the best I have. But if you force my hand, I will. The transfer happens in 40 hours. That's final." The screen went dark. Riel was sitting on the bed, watching with those amber eyes that seemed to see everything. "You're in trouble because of me," she said. Sat down beside her. "I'm in trouble because I made a choice. That's not the same thing." "What choice?" "To not give up on you." Riel leaned against side, her forearms wrapped around his arm, holding tight. "No one has ever fought for me before. My pack loved me, but they were always there. I never had to wonder if someone would choose me. Now everyone is gone, and you're choosing me anyway." "That's what pack does, isn't it?" Riel looked up at her, surprised. "You know about pack?" "I've been reading. Your people believe that pack is the most important thing in the universe. That you would do anything for your pack, and they would do anything for you. That's what family means to the—" Yes, that's what it means. Smiled, then I guess I'm now. That night came to quarters. His face was serious, but there was a spark in his eyes that recognized. It was the look he got when he was about to do something either very brave or very stupid. The transfer is in 40 hours, he said quietly, but the horizon's edge could be ready to leave in 6. Stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that our navigation logs could have an error. I'm saying that our destination could get corrupted somehow. I'm saying that by the time anyone figured out where we went, we could be very far away. That's desertion, that's a crime. I know. You could lose everything, your career, your freedom, everything you've worked for. Looked at Riel, who was pretending to be asleep but was clearly listening to every word. Some things are worth more than careers, Lieutenant. You taught me that. Felt tears threatening to fall, but she held them back. The whole crew would have to agree. We can't force anyone to come with us. I already asked. Everyone said yes. Even Chief Engineer, and you know how much she loves following rules. Why? Why would they risk everything for a child they barely know? Smiled, because she's not just any child, she's Riel. And because we've seen how you look at her and how she looks at you. That kind of love is rare, Lieutenant. The crew wants to protect it. 6 hours later, the horizon's edge slipped away from Station Orion 9. The departure was quiet and smooth, just another small ship leaving a busy station. No one noticed anything unusual until it was too late. By the time the Union officials came to collect Riel's quarters were empty. By the time Admiral tried to contact the horizon's edge, the ship was already 3 systems away. By the time anyone understood what had happened, the small vessel had vanished into the vast darkness of space. They ran. For 3 months, the horizon's edge moved from system to system, never staying anywhere too long. They refueled at remote stations where no one asked questions. They hid in asteroid fields and nebulas where sensors couldn't find them. They became ghosts, chased by both Earth's military and hunters. But they survived. And in those 3 months, something beautiful happened. Taught Riel to read human words. She taught her mathematics and history and how to play the card games that sailors played on long voyages. Riel taught the old songs of the ones her mother had sung before sleep. She taught about customs, about the rituals of pack bonding, about what it meant to truly belong to someone. They became something new. Not mother and daughter, not pack in the traditional sense, but something the galaxy had no word for. Something created from loss and hope and stubborn, impossible love. The crew watched it happen and smiled. They had given up everything to make it possible, and none of them regretted it for a moment. But they all knew the truth. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, the galaxy would find them. And when it did, there would be a reckoning. They were found on a quiet morning in the 4th month. The horizon's edge was hiding in the rings of a gas giant, its engines powered down to avoid detection. Was in the small kitchen making breakfast, while Riel practiced writing human letters at the table. The cub's handwriting was getting better every day. She was proud of her progress and was proud of her. Then the alarm started. 3 Galactic Union patrol ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, surrounding the horizon's edge before anyone could react. They were trapped. There was nowhere to run, no clever trick that could save them this time. Gathered her crew on the bridge. 5 people, all of them tired, all of them scared, but none of them sorry for what they had done. "It's over," she said quietly. "We did our best, but we knew this day would come." Nodded. "No regrets, Lieutenant." "No regrets," the others agreed. Riel stood beside, holding her hand. The cub was trembling, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Will they separate us now?" Knelt down to look into those amber eyes. "They're going to try. But I promise you, Riel, no matter what happens, no matter where they take us, you will always be my pack. Nothing can change that. Not laws, not distance, not time. Nothing." Riel threw her forearms around and held on tight. I'm scared. I know, me too, but we're going to face this together. The trial was held on Themis Ring, the great judicial station where the most important cases in the galaxy were decided. It was a massive wheel of metal and glass, home to thousands of judges, lawyers, and bureaucrats from every species in the Galactic Union. Faced serious charges: kidnapping, violation of Article 47C of the Relations Charter, desertion, conduct unbecoming an officer. Each charge could mean years in prison. Together, they could mean spending the rest of her life locked away, never seeing Riel again. The prosecutor was a union official named Director, a human who had spent his career enforcing law. He was good at his job, and he believed in what he was doing. "This case is not complicated," he said in his opening statement. "Lieutenant Park violated clear and established law. She took a child from her rightful people and fled justice for months. Her motives may have been sympathetic, but motives do not change facts. The law exists to protect children from exactly this kind of situation." His defender was a young lawyer appointed by Earth's government. She was nervous but determined, and she had spent weeks preparing for this moment. "This case is entirely about motives," she argued. "Lieutenant Park didn't take Riel from anyone. She saved her. When the Celestial Mercy was destroyed, Riel was alone, dying, terrified. Lieutenant Park gave her safety, comfort, and love. The question before this court is simple. Should the law protect tradition, or should it protect children?" The trial lasted 2 weeks. Witnesses came and went. Officers about insubordination. Diplomats spoke about the importance of law. Union officials explained why Article 47C existed and why it could not be ignored. But something unexpected was happening outside the courtroom. Citizens began arriving at Themis Ring. Not protesters, not angry mobs, but ordinary people who wanted to watch. Word had spread through networks about what had done. A human had risked everything for a cub who was not her own. In a culture that valued pack loyalty above all else, this was not a crime. This was something they understood. The galleries filled with silver-furred sitting beside humans. They didn't speak to each other, but they watched together. They listened together. They waited together. Elder led the prosecution. He called his witnesses and made his arguments, but noticed something strange. The old's heart didn't seem to be in it. He was doing his duty, following the law, but there was doubt in his amber eyes. Finally, on the 14th day, was permitted to speak. She stood before the court in simple civilian clothes, her military uniform taken away when she was arrested. She looked tired, thinner than she had been 4 months ago, but her voice was strong. "I'm not going to argue about the law," she said. "I know I broke it. I know there might be good reasons for Article 47C to exist. I know that people smarter than me wrote those rules to protect children from being taken from their cultures." She paused, looking at the judges, at the gallery full of humans, at Elder. But Riel didn't have a culture to go back to. Her pack was dead. Her family was gone. She was alone in a broken escape pod, waiting to die. And when I found her, when I opened that door, she asked me a question. His voice shook, but she kept going. She asked, "Are you my pack?" That's a question. The most important question their people know how to ask. It means, will you protect me? Will you choose me? Do I belong to you? Tears were falling down his cheeks now, but she didn't try to stop them. I didn't know how to answer. I don't have fur or claws. I can't teach her the old songs or the sacred traditions. I'm just a human who happened to be in the right place at the right time. But I could hold her. I could keep her warm. I could chase away the nightmares. I could love her. She looked directly at Elder. "If that's not pack, if that's not family, then I don't know what is. And if the law says that love doesn't matter, that tradition is more important than a child's heart, then maybe the law is wrong." The courtroom was completely silent. Then there was movement in the gallery. Riel, who had been sitting with a social worker, broke free and ran. She crossed the courtroom floor, ignoring the protests of the guards, and climbed into his arms. She turned to face the judges, to face Elder, to face everyone who wanted to take her away. "She is my pack," Riel said, her small voice carrying through the silent room. "The law is wrong." Elder stared at the cub and the human holding her. His expression was impossible to read. Then slowly, he lowered his head. The court adjourned for deliberation. But everyone in that room knew that something had changed. The law might be the law, but laws were written by people, and sometimes people were wrong. The verdict took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of waiting, of uncertainty, of fear. 3 weeks during which was held in a small room on Themis Ring, allowed only brief visits with Riel under strict supervision. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years. But outside those walls, the galaxy was changing. The footage of Riel's declaration played on every network, in every language, on every world that had access to the information systems. "She is my pack. The law is wrong." Those words became a rallying cry for billions of beings who had never thought about adoption before. On Earth, people signed petitions and organized peaceful gatherings, not protests against but statements of support. Their signs didn't say humans versus. They said pack is who stays and family has no species. On Prime, the debate was fierce. Traditional elders argued that the law existed for good reasons, that allowing outsiders to claim children would destroy their culture. But younger pushed back. They asked uncomfortable questions. What was more important, the blood in a child's veins or the love in their heart? Elder requested a private meeting with. They sat across from each other in a small room, just the two of them. The ancient and the stubborn human. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You have created a problem," Elder finally said. "I know. Our laws exist for reasons. They have protected our young for generations." Nodded. "I don't doubt that. I believe the people who wrote Article 47C were trying to do something good. They wanted to protect children from being taken from their families, from losing their culture and their identity. That's not a bad thing to want." "Then why did you fight so hard against it?" "Because Riel doesn't need protection from me. She needs me. There's a difference." Elder was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more personal. "I had a mate once. We had 4 cubs together, beautiful children full of life and energy." He paused, his amber eyes looking at something far away. "2 of them survived to adulthood. One died in a border conflict with your people many years ago. One was taken by illness when she was still young." Didn't know what to say. She had not expected this confession. "My daughter, the one who died of illness, she was afraid at the end. She was in pain and scared, and she wanted someone to hold her. I was there. Her mother was there. Her brothers were there. She was surrounded by pack, by family, by love." Elder looked directly at. "If there had been a human there, if a human had been willing to hold my daughter, to comfort her, to make her feel safe in those final moments, I would not have cared about laws. I would not have cared about tradition. I would only have cared that she was not afraid." He leaned back in his chair. "I have spent my life serving my people, following the old ways, defending our traditions, but Riel asked you if you were her pack and you answered her. Not with words, but with actions, with sacrifice, with love." He shook his head slowly. "I cannot fight against that. I don't want to fight against that." The verdict came the following day. The Galactic Union Court ruled that Lieutenant Park had violated existing law. That was undeniable. She had broken Article 47C. She had fled justice. She had done all the things the prosecution had claimed. But the court also ruled that the law itself needed to change. The judges announced a new provision, which would be added to the Relations Charter. It was called the Riel Amendment, named after the small cub whose words had echoed across the galaxy. The amendment stated that in cases involving orphan minors, The child's expressed wishes and demonstrated emotional bonds would be considered equally important as biological and cultural factors. It was not a perfect solution. Some elders were angry. Some human officials were uncomfortable. The amendment would create complications and legal challenges for years to come. But it was a beginning. Was stripped of her military rank. She would never serve in the Earth Defense Corps again, but she was not sent to prison. The court recognized that her actions, while illegal, had come from a place of genuine love and concern for a child's welfare. The council did something unexpected. In a rare gesture of respect, they granted honorary membership in the clan that Riel's family had belonged to. This meant that by law was officially part of Riel's family, not a replacement for the pack that had been lost, but a new branch of the family tree. When they told Riel the news, the cub cried, but they were happy tears, the best kind. The day they left Themis Ring, the station's docking bay was crowded. Humans and stood together, watching the small ship that would carry and Riel to their new life. Some of them cheered, some of them cried, some of them just smiled. Was there, along with the rest of the Horizon's Edge crew. They had all received official pardons, their records cleared because of the role they had played in what people were already calling the trial that changed the galaxy. "Where will you go?" asked. Smiled, "I don't know yet. We need to find a home, somewhere quiet maybe, somewhere we can build a life together." "That sounds nice." "It does," she hugged him tightly. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." Riel was waiting by the ship, her silver-blue fur shining in the station lights. She had grown in the past months, not just physically but in spirit. She was still learning, still healing, still finding her way. But she was no longer the terrified cub that had pulled from a broken escape pod. "Ready?" asked. "Ready," Riel took his hand with two of her 4 arms. "But I have a question." "What is it?" "When you found me, I asked if you were my pack. You never answered with words. You just held me." Nodded, "I remember." "Why didn't you say anything?" Knelt down so she could look into Riel's amber eyes. "Because some things are too important for words. Some things you can only say with actions. I couldn't tell you I was your pack, Riel. I had to show you." Riel considered this for a moment. Then she smiled, a wide, happy smile that made her whole face light up. "You showed me." "I did. And you're still showing me, every day." Pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "Every day, for the rest of my life, that's what pack does." They boarded the ship together and flew away, leaving Themis Ring behind. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. They didn't know what the future would bring. They didn't know what challenges they would face. They only knew that they would face them together. Years later, Ambassador Riel Park would stand before the Galactic Union Assembly. She would be the first human dual citizen, a symbol of everything that had changed since that day in a broken escape pod. She would propose new laws, new amendments, new ways for the galaxy species to recognize each other as family. And in the gallery, watching with tears of pride in her eyes, would be an aging woman with streaked hair and a stubborn set to her jaw. The woman who had answered a whispered question without words. The woman who had changed everything. Because sometimes, the smallest voice can shake the largest foundations. And sometimes, love is the only law that matters.